the play to start. And this should be good. There we go. All right. So hello, everybody. This is Tish Talks Tech, and my name is 𝗬𝗬𝗕𝗄𝗃. And today we have a personal hero of mine, Jeff Bisti. Can you believe it? He's here, and we are going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today here on Tish Talks Tech. I'm so happy to have you, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited for this.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, this I've been thinking about this particular interview for a very long time, and I was able to share that I've been anticipating this interview and just really, really happy that you were able to make it with us. You were my gateway. You were the one that was my gateway for Master the Mainframe. So, if I had a hat on, I would tip it for you, and then I would do like a little thing and put it back. All that choreography. Yeah, but I don't have all that.
Too late to make that happen.
Cocktails. So, just really happy that you're here. We don't have a lot of time. And as you know, time, an hour. Yeah, but
it flies when you're having fun.
It does. 100%. I'm glad you feel me. I want to get started, and I want to start with what inspired you to learn about mainframe technology, off and running.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that what inspired me. Well, it was sometimes a requirement, or like when you have to do something is just the best motivator. So I went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie. It's up the road from IBM a little bit. And at the time, I'm a man of a certain age here. Internet was like a thing that people had in their houses, but it wasn't something that you were like always connected to. Like you would log into the internet, like you had, dial-up mostly. And the network at Marist was a token ring network. It wasn't Wi-Fi, it wasn't Ethernet, it was token ring. And token ring, you couldn't just buy like a $20 switch and throw it in the front of it, and everyone in the room could plug into it. And more people were coming to Marist as computer science and information technology and information science students, or information systems students. And you'd get like 2, sometimes 3 students in a room, in a dorm room, that all want to connect to the internet, but like only one of them has the token ring jack thing there. And it was a bit of a problem, because hey, I need to get on the internet. Can I borrow your computer, kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a different time. Like it's kind of like talking about dropping off film at the the developing place, but a few people, Linux had just kind of landed on the scene, mm-hmm. And people said, hey, if you take an old computer, it doesn't have to even have like a Pentium system in it, just like a 386 or whatever. You can install this operating system called Linux on it. And it's this free operating system. It takes some work to get into it, but you can put your token ring card in that machine and put an Ethernet card in that machine and set it up like a router. And then you can plug in as many computers into the switch behind that, or a hub, as you want. And we needed to do that to get onto to get multiple people onto the network there. So like sophomore year, we started learning about Linux and installing Linux. And well, as long as I have this system here, I'm going to explore all the open source software, and I'm going to install a web server. I'm going to install PHP and, learn about Python and Perl and all these, these languages that you couldn't necessarily get on like a Windows type machine. And thankfully the college was very supportive of it. They saw this like underground movement going on. And as long as we didn't do anything like dangerous to the network, like set up like a DHCP server, or, start handing out domain names or something like that, they're like, we see this is going on. We appreciate it, and we think this is cool. They bussed us to Linux Expo. I think my sophomore or my junior year, but because of that, I got this appreciation for hacking around on systems and playing around with network interfaces in Linux, and I managed to land an internship at IBM doing Linux on the mainframe, because at the time they had just started experimenting with doing Linux on S390 at the time. And it was kind of a cool thing, is that they had a system that we could log into, and it was a little bit different than like, the machine underneath our desk that we were playing around with. There was some stuff that wasn't there. There was some stuff that we could look at that was kind of interesting.
Right.
And I did that for, I think, like a summer and a half as an intern. And I talked to my manager. I was like, hey, what do I need to do to turn this into a real job? Because I'm getting about like to graduating time. And
where the money at?
Yeah, where the money at? But let me just say this: I was getting paid as an intern, and that was really exciting too. Like, hey, I get to play around with this mainframe thing that I've kind of heard about, and
Right.
I get to do Linux and networking stuff. Great. And my manager, 𝗕𝗄𝗕, he found me a job opening. He's like, you need to apply to this. You have all the skills. And it was doing 𝗬𝗓 system test. 𝗬𝗓 being the network cards for the mainframe, with Linux on the mainframe. And it was like, cool. Like I have the networking background because I had to set up this router in my dorm room. I have
Right.
a Linux experience because I had to do that. And I heard about this mainframe thing because I read an article in Wired magazine about how UPS uses mainframes. And I'm like, okay, I have background, and I have an interest. That sounds like a good recipe. And even for someone like me who's constantly self-doubting and saying like, hey, I don't have the qualifications, like, I've imposter syndrome all over the place. I was like, there's nobody more suited for this job than me. And I got the job, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, cool, I get to start working on this right away. But day one, I was like, okay, well, I need to learn about 𝗲𝗏 and TCP/IP stacks and the IPL process, and like device addresses. And it's not just TCP/IP, it's like SNA and these weird things called hypersockets. So I needed to learn all of that in order to put everything that I already knew to use. So that became my real driver, was like, what motivated me to learn about mainframe? Well, I had to for my job, because I wanted to show them that I knew all this stuff, but I had to learn the mainframe side of things. So
Yeah.
that's what really got me into it. And just seeing that we're really focused on transactional integrity, that has driven me like all these years.
I mean, sometimes it's just that one thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I applaud you, because I love to hear how, okay, well, I don't feel like I'm that qualified, but I actually have put my hands on it. And I talk about that a lot. You got to put your hands on it, and you have to be able to have this faith in yourself, this belief that says, oh yeah, well, I actually did this part and I am interested in that. I think that's brilliant. And the folks that are watching, they're going to be like, oh yeah, oh, that was excellent. It's always, you always get a little piece of a light bulb that starts to flicker when you start breaking it down, right?
And experience is a multiplier. It's at some point you got to get hands on. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So tell us, what do you think, or how do you think that like mainframe technology differs from distributed or other types of computing?
Yeah, and I think I kind of like, it really is the transactional integrity that stood out to me at first. Like the entire foundation of 𝗧 is that the whole thing is built around this idea of a unit of work, and as soon as a unit of work is identified, it's followed through from beginning to end. And obviously we hope that this unit of work, this transaction, this deposit being made, this thing being changed from false to true, we hope that it goes through successfully. But even if it doesn't, for some reason, like, we have all these facilities in the system to get it to a known state. And it's a feature of applications. It's a feature of the system. It's in the hardware, the firmware, and it's really built into like the mindset of the people too. I remember, like, I was used to, when something broke on like my Linux system, I would just run through like all the commands that I knew and see, did that work? Did that work? Did that work? You know, reboot the system, do this stuff. And I remember the first time that like we ran into like a real, something went wrong on one of the mainframe systems we were working on. I was like, try this. And like, we don't try things. We do some research. We look at the logs. We call up the subject matter experts, and it would be like a couple, maybe like an hour or so of reading through the documentation before somebody would sit down at the keyboard and key in the command, and then you would watch like on the system log, you would just watch the red messages peel away because they had alleviated the storage problem, and that was like a real eye-opening experience to me, that we take these transactions very seriously, that you can't just have them disappear and go poof. We're not in a situation where we can like pop up an error message and say, whoopsie doodle, something went wrong, try again in 5 minutes. Like we really don't do that. And the first time I saw that in action was really eye-opening, and it didn't frustrate me at all. I said, okay, cool. I'm in the right place here. And it's a fundamental difference. Not everybody likes it, but that's what makes it different. And the first time I saw that, I'm like, cool, I'm in the right place. I love this.
Yeah. I think that anyone that's worked on the platform, if the very first time that you actually see the team cohabitating, it's really eye-opening, because you don't, like you said, usually, okay, let's run through some commands, let's see what's happening. But on mainframe, that's not it. You have to think from what's happening. You have to look at your log. That is huge. For me, it was when I first started. I feel ancient now, but when those many months ago, learning how to read documentation is huge. Especially as somebody that's fresh, and being able to say, okay, I think I found it. Can I help you with what I found? And then the team says, yeah, what did you see? No, that's not it. And it helps you. It feels a little weird.
Yeah.
No, 𝗬𝘗, that's not it. That's not it. One more paragraph. And I'm like, okay. But I love that you bring that. You feel my pain. I know you do.
Yeah, but and that's I am someone who has always read documentation. Like if I'm buying something new, I'll I've ordered it on a Monday and it's going to arrive on a Thursday. In those 4 days, I've read the instructions for it so that when it gets here, I can use it. And I do the same thing with code. Like, is this going to involve this module? Okay, I need to know the ins and outs of that module.
Yep.
I need to talk to the person who last touched it on the system to find out what it's all about. And it's some of it is just like, you want to be prepared, but it really is the mindset. It's not seen as like a weird OCD thing. It's just, no, that's really how we work. We transactional integrity. That's put that on the t-shirt. That's what it's all about.
That'd be a great t-shirt too, by the way. Just let me know when it hits. I'll buy it. Yeah. Ship it
in this next video.
Right. So how do you think that mainframe technology is going to evolve? And I always ask this, and I say like in 10 years, but in 10 years, a box could probably fly. If we keep going the way that we're going. So how do you think? How do you think it's going to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years is such a long stretch. And I there's probably like only 3 people on the face of the earth who like I would trust have any sort of real insight into 10 years. And I think the more you know, the less confident you would be in saying 10 years. Like 10 years is huge. And I remember giving talks at Share and other conferences where like I'd show like some new technology. Here's a new framework, here's a new library, here's, some new cloud service you can spin up. And somebody would be like, I vividly remember this thing, somebody in the back of the room, like, this is great. I see why somebody would want to use it, but is this going to be around 10 years from now? And you're like, no, it's not. We're going to be on to the thing that's after that. But like, that's not a bad thing. Like we shouldn't be looking at things that are going to be static for 10 years. That's the mark of something that's not doing its job, even like the most core fundamental things within the mainframe platform need to evolve. So yeah, 10 years, but I think where we need to really be moving is the mainframe needs to be established as like it needs to be the preferred destination for containers going forward, period. And this, I should make clear at this point that I'm talking as Jeff Bisti, just mainframe enthusiast, and these views are not those of IBM, et cetera, et cetera. But this concept of a container platform is really exciting to me. You talk about that light bulb moment earlier. I've had several of those around containers. I think this is just like one of the key things that's going to, we've set up all the cards. This is where we take advantage of it. Some organizations really benefit from having like public cloud containers. Great. There are some organizations that will really benefit from having like full control over their containers. And I believe that, mainframe is the place where those containers can run the best. That is the gold standard. That is like, if something goes wrong with my code when it's running on Z or Linux 1, like I know the problem is in my code and not with like, oh, the platform is doing this thing again,
Yeah.
So there's this profound focus on enabling Red Hat OpenShift container platform, on enhancing the platforms that you get, all the benefits from running platforms and containers on the platform. Linux 1 and IBM Z for security, performance, sustainability, TCO. That's our space. And providing infrastructure and services and resources around units of work, which are now containers, like that's totally our jam. It needs to happen. That's, to me, it needs to be the preferred destination for containers. That's where I see it moving.
For sure. I've been on a soapbox here lately, and the soapbox has been it actually has like a comforting pillow for me to sit when I'm ready to just sit and talk about it. But why is there so much pushback for the cloud when the mainframe, one of the best things about mainframe technology to me is the virtualization aspect.
Yeah, I think a lot of people
don't get it.
Yeah, I think some people are still stuck in the world that cloud means offloading out of the data center, period, and that's it. And my stuff runs somewhere else. That's the cloud. Cloud really is underpinned by containerization and provisioning services, and just like automating a lot of what used to be a 1 or 2 time task. And so to me, when the minute somebody starts talking about cloud, I really, I have to resist the urge just to be like, stop. What do you mean by cloud?
Right.
Are you talking about services? Are you talking about containers? Or are you literally just talking about like, it's this thing that I made someone else's problem? Because, it's still code.
Once you start.
Yeah. So let's talk about cloud there. And when someone says, mainframe versus cloud, look, mainframe is cloud, and not from the we don't need to do anything standpoint, but from the standpoint that it really is about providing services in real time as they're needed in a flexible environment. And whether your mainframe is on-prem or off-prem or where it resides doesn't really, I won't say it doesn't really matter, but that's not the heart of the issue of what cloud is. Without containerization, cloud is just co-location. Put that on.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Say it one more time. Because the people in the back of this broadcast, let them know.
Without containerization, cloud is just co-location.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I'm like, 99% of the time, wherever your center is, you're not even there. How do you think that you're working from home?
Right.
There's so much. And I think the part that gets me is I love the crowd that says, well, we're gonna just put we're gonna store everything in the cloud. And they talk about the cloud as a place.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back to networking and I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. It can't really be a place. Why are people that actually run our data saying that this is a place? It is not a place. Don't get me started.
I think Apple and Netflix have done a good job of kind of oversimplifying the cloud, because when my phone fills up, where do the pictures go? They go to this offsite, which is the cloud. And Netflix has, we don't need to buy or rent DVDs anymore because now they exist in the cloud. So it's an easy construct of thinking like, okay, it's this magical place that I never see where the stuff lives that I don't have to deal with. And there's some of that applies to what we do, but the people that really get in there, they know it's the services and the containers, and we've been doing that for years. We just need to keep moving.
Yeah, been doing it for years, and y'all didn't even know what it was called.
Yeah.
So quit playing. It's gonna be okay. So let's talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. Some advice, if you will. What advice would you give someone that's interested in learning about mainframes, but they are unsure of where to start? They don't know what to do, right? What do you say?
I get this question a lot as the face of IBM-Z training. I find it heartwarming that people reach out to me and ask me this, and I here comes that imposter syndrome. I kind of feel like I'm not qualified to tell somebody how they should get started, because I feel like my path in was very unique. No, you need to start in a dorm room with 2 other people and a token ring jack. Like, that's the path that I recommend. But like, we're in such a different space now where we have communities and we have the Open Mainframe project, and to some extent we have LinkedIn. The answer really depends on the person asking it, because like, you're looking at a career that needs to be rewarding. At the end of the day, money is cool, but like, you can only drag yourself into a job if it feels rewarding. And I might not have lasted in mainframe if my first job was a job that I got just to have a job. If it was in like security or database, and I love that stuff, but I didn't have the background, I might have gotten so frustrated that I looked somewhere else. So I needed that interest in Linux and networking. I know earlier in the week we were talking about like the Price is Right games, and like, I love those constructs of like, something feels different when you have 2 out of 3 numbers right. You're in a much better state than when you have no numbers right, and like, there's you've already picked 2 strikes out of the strike game, 3 strikes game.
3 strikes.
I have so I was into Linux, I was into networking. The mainframe operating system and architecture was the big question mark for me, but like, I felt like, okay, I have some interest there, and interest is better than like fear. So you really have to be into things and have interests to pull you forward. So you can't start cold and say, I want to get involved in mainframe, period. Where do I get started? Because that's like saying I want to get involved in music. Like, how do I do a music? So I always say, like, get involved in the community. That's the best thing you can do. Start with Open Mainframe project. That's kind of like the central hub of everything, and you'll see what people are talking about on the forums there. You'll get the emails. That's like where the real areas of growth are, and you can lurk around for a while. But I reach out to people. There's very few people who will be like ghost you or just say like, I'm really too busy right now. Read the docs yourself. And most people will say, yeah, here's some behind the scenes information. If you want to get involved, here's the person to contact. So get involved in the community there. IBM.com/community/Z to get involved in the Z community. That's kind of like runs parallel to Open Mainframe project in a lot of ways. But obviously you have to get started with like some general knowledge. General knowledge is great, but the sooner you specialize and the sooner you get your hands on a system and do something, like that's the better off you'll be. So I talked a lot there. The too long didn't listen there is get involved in the communities. take your time finding an area of interest and get hands-on as soon as possible. And you can do that through, the IBM 𝗧𝗔𝗓𝗡 program. There's certain courses like IBM.com/training that have hands-on components. And there's also, through the Open Mainframe project, like your community support and your experience and your interest. That's the trifecta right there. That's
Right.
what's going to enable you.
Exactly. I think that a lot of folks will just benefit just from that piece alone, because we always talk about, well, how do we reinvent or revitalize or whatever the mainframe? And it's like, well, we've got a whole pool of people that have all of these resources, and they just have to touch them and start talking about it. And you'd be surprised, even if it's just, if it was me and I just talked to one person, that one person will say, well, have you met so-and-so? Well, do you know this person? Let me show you about whatever. And so, like I always say, a closed mouth does not get fed. So, you got to open up, and you have to be able to put your hands on this technology. And then I think a lot of times too, just to be very brief, the moment that you start putting your hands on it, that's when it starts clicking for you. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you really need that component. It's a wild world. It's to me, one of the interesting things about getting involved in the business world, as opposed to just like the purely technology world, is how people sometimes treat like their contacts and their networking people like a resource, and they really are. And it's not just like, oh, you work with computers, let me tell you, my niece works with computers, or my my so-and-so works with computers. People that work in the mainframe world are acutely aware of all of the nuances, and sometimes you'll just be talking about a problem, and you'll see them kind of going like this.
Yeah.
And they're just going through their mental Rolodex of like, I know this person, how am I going to remember their name? Okay. And they'll find somebody who they talk to like 3 or 4 years, and they've gone down the exact same path as you, and they'll have the best input for you. So reach out to people, because we love making those connections.
Yeah. And it just strengthens the community, and the ideas, the exchange of ideas. Don't get me started. People, you'd be surprised. You just
I want there to be a tier, like a badge for share, where you can go and just hang out in the hallways in between sessions. Like, sometimes I don't need to go to the sessions. I just want to talk to the people in the hallways when they're like vibrating at the same level. That's the best networking for me, really.
Absolutely. So what challenges do you think that the mainframe or that mainframe technology will face in some of the coming years?
We need to get better at, and again, this is a Jeff Bisti statement here, not my employer statement, but we need to get better at adopting not just technology, but methods and approaches. In the past, modernization has meant, you take this tool and replace it with this tool, and now we have the more modern tool, and we use this instead of that tool. Today's toolbox it's a revolution. Like, cloud is a revolution. APIs are a revolution. AI, DevOps, CI/CD, like hybrid cloud, like it affects so much more than just the software that's installed on a system. It affects project management. It goes beyond the obvious. So some of it is subtle, but if you pay attention to like who the leaders are in tech overall, they've changed cultures just as much as they've changed technology. And that's so important. We can't just say, well, we're modern because we're using X instead of Y.
Right.
It really needs to be an approach. And when we do that and we make those changes and they're meaningful, and you can see the work that you do here affects the end product, that's when the benefits become unquestionable. And that's, it's, you can see the leaders who are really pushing for these changes, and those are the people who I really try to support and get behind.
That I love. I love to hear it. I love to hear it. So I want to talk now about what you do in your free time because, as mainframe professionals, we are people. And
Mhm.
this is like the favorite part of the show for me. So what are some of the hobbies or interests outside of technology and mainframe computing that you participate in?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on something really important there. Is like the the people who I think are the best at their jobs, who I really respect, and who just do the best work. I think um, you can tell they're real people. You know what their hobbies are, and you really have to have that flexibility and that contrast. Like the idea that like the person, I've never been impressed by someone's work who starts out by explaining that they were up until 3 in the morning working on it. Like that's just kind of softening the beaches. That's saying like, okay, well, don't think too highly of this because I stayed up really late working on it. You have to have that work-life balance. It's so important. I've my main hobby for, geez, 20-25 years now is I've always played guitar, sometimes bass, in bands. And I love when you get, we were talking about teamwork earlier, when you get that group of people together with a common goal, and they can play off each other and depend on one another to make that awesome music. There's nothing better in the world than that. So even when I'm not in a band, I'm always writing music. I'm learning songs. Music is, as within your life, it's been a huge part of mine, and I can just tap into the pure pleasure part of my brain when I'm making music with people. It's the greatest thing in the world. Um, and 2 years ago, it was really hard to get band stuff going. I almost had this one band off the ground that was going to be like my dream shot band. Like this is going to be the thing that like I get to do around town and have so much fun with. And then
Hmm.
COVID lockdown happened, and we're like, oh, wow, I guess it's 3 years ago now. I guess we don't get to do that. And I needed a musical outlet, and I started a YouTube channel for like guitar effects pedals boxes like this. I'm obsessed with gadgets, and this is like a way of introducing technology into guitar. And I said, I'm just going to start, like, I'm going to do a
Wow.
podcast about guitar effects pedals. Like, it'll be really niche and da, 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 da. And I was talking with my barber, actually. He's like, no, don't do a podcast, do a YouTube channel. You need the visual element. And I'm like, I don't know if I can pull that off. And then like a week later, I'm like setting up lights in my basement and buying better microphones and stuff. And that's been like a real creative outlet for me. It started during pandemic, and I just hit like 6,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. So I'm always
Wow.
writing songs, recording things, writing scripts. I work with other content developers. I work with companies. That's taken up a lot of my time, but I always make sure it's fun because I
Yeah,
don't want it to be like an obligation. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's Stomp Box Breakdown on YouTube, and
for sure.
yeah, it's I love that it's completely outside of my day job, but it
Hmm.
is, me in front of a camera talking about stuff. And there have been a couple of times where early on I was like, okay, that'll be this Jeff and that'll be this Jeff, and the two shall never meet. And in the middle of like early on, somebody was like, aren't you the guy that taught me COBOL? Like on a video about distortion pedal. And I'm like, oh, I guess I can't, keep that separate. And it's happened in both directions ever since. People recognize me from one or the other. um, I, I, I too, I've learned stuff making that channel that I've directly put to use in my mainframe training videos too. um, but so they're somewhat related, but it's a completely different part of my brain, believe it or not.
Right. No, that's so cool. I'm trying to think who all do I know is a musician that is on the platform. So it'd be you, Herb Daly,
Yep.
Raj Mahato,
Uh-huh.
um, Jeffrey Decker.
Jeff Fry, he is an IBM fellow. He lives around here, and he has a music studio that I've actually used for my channel. So we had some good time talking about that.
I love it. I love that there's there's a connection, like the soul connection to something that's outside of the technology, but at the same time, it helps us to think so that by the time that it's time for us to go back to work, we do our best because we're alive on the inside. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and there's I think there's something to be said for if you ever played in like beyond grade school band, like if you've ever played in like the orchestra or the jazz band or something like that, you kind of get used to the idea that you're not playing lead all the time, but your part is just as important. And working as a team, like you get to work as an ensemble, and you're familiar with the idea of listening to yourself and saying, that's not my best work, I need to work on that. It's there's so many, when you apply for a job, there's a lot of like true, false, da, 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 da. Like I always feel like, cut to the chase. Have you been in an ensemble orchestra before? Because I can tell a lot about somebody by how far they took their musical career. Or like, have you worked at McDonald's before? Like, okay, if you can handle a lunch rush, then you might be able to handle like, there's 5,000 people on your system and your jazz two spools are starting to run low.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing, just different tools on the other end. I don't know. I do try to make sure that I have hobbies where I can just like kind of mind blank, just do something. Like I love hiking. We have lots of hiking around here, and I need to not have my hands in front of a keyboard or looking at a screen. Oh, I'm done working today. I can go from the medium-sized screen to the small screen and the big screen. Sometimes you just have to not look at the screen, crazy as it is.
Right. So what's your favorite bass line that's come through? What for me, it's like, I'm gonna have people laughing at me. I don't care. I love the bass line that's over that song called Flashlight from Parliament.
Okay, yeah.
I love that. It's that's gonna be mean forever.
There's a lot of songs that I'm gonna like. I love the band Muse. I like Our Lady Peace a lot. And a lot of times growing up, I never paid attention to bass lines because I was like a guitar guy. And recently I picked up bass because like, well, no one needs a guitar player for their band. I'll play bass. And yeah, I got to play in a bunch of bands that way. But a lot of the songs that I'm like, I love this song and I don't know why, it was because of the bass line. And the bass line doing non-obvious things and giving you like cues that you subconsciously pick up on. I mean, the drums do that too with the bass line or the bass drum. And a good drummer, and I say this because my band is looking for drummers right now, if you want to join, they don't just say, okay, I'm doing the chorus, I'm doing the verse, and now I'm doing the chorus, and now I'm doing the verse again. There's a whole spinning up and leading in context thing that's the bass line does that more than I think any other instrument. And playing with dynamics, so important. If you're a musician, it's not just the notes. Don't just look at guitar tab. Focus on the dynamics.
It's the dynamics. That's it.
Have like 8 different kinds of picks. Learn how to play with your fingers.
It's literally the salt, but it's different. It's like, is this Himalayan sea salt or Himalayan salt? Is this pink salt? Is it? No, for real.
I know.
That's it. And I don't think people get it, but they will. If you're a music person, that's your jam. Anyway,
it can't just be the notes. It's your intent. People can tell your intent.
Yeah. When the orchestra, I know as a vocalist, when he does this one, and I know that I'm supposed to crescendo at a certain point, and I can feel how the music is building, because when you're on stage, you feel that stuff. It's a lot different. I think so you get that salt piece,
Yeah. I think more bands like rock bands need a conductor. I think that would really help. Like we were fortunate that our singer will like step forward and do a lot of body movements that really cue us in. But like, why are conductors only a thing for fancy bands? Like why can't a ska band have a conductor? Like if if 𝗕𝗫𝗕𝗂𝗲𝗃 can have a guy who just dances, why not have a conductor up there as well?
Why not? Why not? Prince did it well, you know.
Yes.
He was able to conduct and play. Can you just oh my gosh.
He was a conductor. He was definitely a conductor.
Yeah.
James Brown, also
James
a conductor.
Brown, very good. Yes, absolutely. Look, we're going to turn this webcast into what do you love about music here in a few minutes.
Oh,
but yeah, no, you have some really good points. So I'm gonna move to the next question.
Yeah.
Are there any technology related podcasts or blogs that you enjoy listening to or reading in your free time?
So I tend to avoid like general purpose technology podcasts and stuff, because when I learn about things, I want to learn from like the subject matter experts, like not someone who was like an AI expert last week and a blockchain expert this week. And like I like my discussions to be deep. Yeah. And it's okay if they challenge me. It's okay if something doesn't make sense to me, because if I have the interest, I can dig into that and do research, and then I'll come back like at the end of the week and be like, oh, that thing that didn't make any sense to me, it's totally obvious to me now, and then I know I'm making progress. But like for like websites, I really like Ars Technica. They do a really good job of not overstepping their bounds in terms of like, you know, they're not trying to be AI experts or, you know, whatever. It's a lot about hardware. It's a lot about, you know, hands-on physical technology. Slashdot is still really good for the discussions. I subscribe to a couple subreddits. As for like podcasts, like I really like there's this podcast called Well, There's Your Problem. I guess there's probably a comma in there too after well, but it's an engineering podcast with slides.
Love that.
And it's long form, and it's super dry, but the hosts are fun, and you really do learn a lot, because these are people who are just like hyper focused on things like I am. So it's a lot about like trains and bridges and buildings, but a lot about trains. And I got to see a live taping of their show in Philly a couple months ago, and just to be around like 150 other Jeff Bistis, which was basically the entire crowd. It was a trip, but I really enjoyed that. There's this guy, 𝗏𝗃𝗍𝗏.com, who does like product teardown videos. He'll just buy weird stuff off of eBay and then take it apart, and he'll say like, oh, this is a flyback transformer here, and oh, they're using, you know, this type of diode. And I learned a lot about electronics from him. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, he's a little more popular. He just did something with Linus Tech Tips. I really like his videos. I learn a lot in an entertaining fashion.
Right.
But like when I sit down like to eat, like when I sit down like to eat and watch TV, I don't really watch like programs or movies anymore. Like I'll log on to YouTube and just like, oh, here's a 15-minute video. Cool, that's all I need. I watch videos of like people speed running video games, and I've no interest in doing it. I'm not good enough to do that.
Okay.
But they are completely, again, this goes to my interest. They are hyper focused on finishing something, on finishing that lap of Mario Kart 64 faster than the next person, even if it's like 0.008 seconds faster than the next person. They'll get it, and then they'll dance around the computer, and it's what I like about it is that, one, they're just so they're experts in their field. They're hyper focused on it, and a lot of it gets down to this mischievous mindset that I like to keep in mind, especially when I'm designing something, because they're looking for exploits in video games.
Mm-hmm.
They found out that if you crash into the fence on this farm level in your cart going at a certain angle, you'll slip through it, and it'll let you finish the course like half a second faster.
Wow.
And you watch that and you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Like, mm-hmm. You know, the obvious joke is like, oh, they don't have anything better to do with their time. But like, you think about somebody doing that and finding joy in it, which they are, which is the most important thing. And the fact that there is this community around it, and that mischievous mindset that's trying to find like an extra like half a second on a Mario Kart course, it's the exact same mindset of somebody saying, I'm locked out of this account. I wonder if I can get back into it without a password. And anybody who's designing code of any sort or any sort of system needs to know that there's the way that you want people to use things, and then there's the way that people who want something will use them, because they will
Every
find
time.
every single time like, okay, I'm going to open up 2 browser windows, I'm going to get myself locked out on this one, and then this one still going to be logged in? Like there's I'm going to change the clock on my system so that it looks like I'm in the future, and this thing my lockout time should be passed. People are always going to do that, and it's kind of scary when you're thinking about like enterprise applications. So sometimes it's a lot more fun to just watch somebody doing that exact same approach to video games, because it's there. There's games that are supposed to take 8 hours to finish where people are doing speed runs in like 13 minutes. So watch someone do a Half-Life speed run. Watch somebody do like a Hitman speed run. Those are hackers. They're not writing code, but those are hackers in the hacker mindset. And anybody who thinks that their code is 100% secure or it's safe, you need to be aware of that mindset. So that's is a long question for a simple answer. So engineering podcasts about disasters with slides, product teardowns, and speed run videos of video games. My search history is it's littered with weird stuff.
And that, I think that's okay. We'll give you a pass on that. So do you think there are any misconceptions about people who work in technology and their interests or hobbies outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, people need to be aware that like you don't get better by denying yourself fun. Like you need to have fun. You need to have hobbies. You need to have that contrast, because you'll always bring something from what you do outside of work into work. Always. I love playing Call of Duty, especially the DMZ mode.
Oh my goodness.
I stay up way too late playing that. I have friends who I meet up with regularly. Like I don't know what they look like, but we get together all the time.
Right.
And when I'm playing that, what I think about is that a lot of people have no understanding about the code that runs outside of their own devices. So like it's on an Xbox or a PlayStation or a PC, and they just think that like, oh, my PlayStation's talking to your PlayStation. That's how the game happens. And there's this whole back end infrastructure of services and supporting code that lets that happen. And it's not just video games. It's banking. It's our cameras around our houses. It's our own personal devices and stuff. Like there are people who think, and they're not dumb. They're just it's easy to think this way, that my banking app is just that the bank is shrunk down and lives in my phone now. And if I need this to go faster, I need to get a faster phone. Like there's so much code that lives on the back end that supports all of this to happen. And part of it is we've built that code to be invisible. It's invisible by design. It has no visual element to it, so people never see it. But that code, the stuff that supports the banking applications, the stuff that supports my insurance app, the YouTube, gaming, all that stuff, there's so much back end code that's invisible to people. And to me, that's where the really interesting stuff is, because the stuff that's presented to us on our devices is strictly there just for us to make it look pretty. The permanent, the data that needs to happen that needs to work, the data that needs to be permanent, that's all on the back end. And that it's the fact that it's invisible is a testament to how good it is. Sometimes right. It's not. It doesn't make you don't think about it until you need to. But I think people would be shocked at how much code exists outside of their own phones and devices. I would love to school them on that someday.
That would be such a good just series. Like,
Yeah.
how is it that my refrigerator and my washing machine talk to each other? How does that happen? How is it that, when I'm playing this video game, that somebody could instant message me all of a sudden? That's beauty.
Yeah.
That's beauty, and people don't get it, and that, I think that's the best part about being a technologist, is that you actually, when you look at these things, you go to the game place. Do people even get stuff from the game place anymore? I don't know. But
I think it's where you buy those Funko Pops.
Yeah,
figures is
little things. But when you go, when you're buying a system, do you really know? Do you really understand what could actually happen with that particular system and what you could do with it besides just the game?
Oh yeah.
Right. So like, what about when you order food? I know, like, my daughter, when she's at school and everything, and they're like, hey, we're going to use the credit card. I'm like, okay, thanks for warning me, know, but we're going to dash something really quick, and I'm like, do you guys even know how much technology it takes to order that? To get a person to deliver it to you, to have that person instant message you, to run that transaction and actually pay for it.
And then you get a picture of your front door. Like
yes!
that. It is the ultimate stunt of technology right there. It's every corner of every style of transaction is fully on display when you order a sandwich from up the street. Like it is astounding. And it, I guess its complexity only really shows itself when one element of that doesn't work.
Yeah. That is very true. I'm glad you brought that out. I want to skip ahead just a little bit, because I think that these next couple of questions, and we only have a few minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
I told you it's going to go by.
I knew it. I believe it. I'm living
it. I want to know, how do you define success in your personal life?
Mm-hmm. When I can see a clear link between the work that I'm putting in and the finished product, that's when I know that I've been successful on something. There are parts of the Mainframe practitioner videos that we did years and years ago. I would love to do a reboot of those. There are times when we just stopped and said, nope, we can do that better. And what do you see as we can do better? Oh, do that. Okay, cool. And we put in the work and re-recorded something or rewrote something or rephrased something. And when I run into somebody at Share who says, I loved the way you phrased this. This was so helpful. I've played this multiple times, and it's the thing that we went back and spent an hour redoing. I'm getting choked up here. That's the stuff.
Take your time.
I know. That's the stuff where I'm like, man, I feel successful. Like my passion is aligned with what's needed, and I can see the results. That's success for me. Like I can put in hours and hours and hours of work. I don't care how late I have. I'm not bragging about how late, but the work doesn't feel like work when there's a direct connection to the results, and you can see the results. And we started seeing the results of those videos right away. Like that was one of my ultimate successes. It's one of the things I had the most fun doing. And it underscores a lot of what we're talking about here. Is like, you don't have to suffer to be productive. You just have to be aligned.
Alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely it. And like, we shouldn't feel like, well, there's the work that I do for my day job, and then there's the work that I do to advance my career. Like, ideally, everything is in alignment, and you get to work on the stuff that you find compelling and interesting, and it advances your company as well as you. That's the alignment right there.
Right.
Like, and when it works that way, it's the best feeling in the world.
Right. I know you mentioned Share. The very first time that I ever met you was at Share. I just finished doing, I think I was on a panel.
Yep.
And
Christy
he had
Schroeder
walked up and I was like, hi. How are you? It was this person is real. Oh my goodness. You know,
you look
just
so
really
in 3 dimensions.
Yeah. It was something that I will never ever forget, because again, you know, like you're saying, how do you perceive personal success? And for me, it was a full circle thing, because like I said, when I started, it was all master the mainframe. I remember watching your videos and I was just like, how does he know all this stuff? Where did he get that concept from? Let me do high JCL and see if that actually works. Oh, I have colors. And, you know, for me, that was like a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, but it is, because, you know, if you want to be able to read your stuff, hey, read your stuff well and make it pretty. So
we love pretty code.
Look, and Bisti is the one that taught me that. So yeah, thank you. And from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks that are out there that are just like me, that watched your videos and was just like, I got it. It just makes sense. It's almost as if you think like we do, and you could just extrapolate what you have, and you're just like, hey, I'm just gonna let you have it. Here you go.
Almost as yeah. I think my wife taught me this. She's an educator about teaching with empathy for the learner. And if you can't put yourself in the seat of somebody consuming what you're putting out there, and anticipate where they're going to get bored, where they're going to have questions, what's going to excite them, then you're really, you know, working blind there. You really need to be able to put yourself in that seat. And so for anything that I've done for, you know, Master the Mainframe 𝗧𝗍 for the training content, for anything, I picture, you know, Jeff Bisti, who came into IBM, who knew some Linux stuff but didn't know mainframe stuff. Like, what would have helped me back then? And without that perspective, I'd just be like, here's some information. Does this help? You know? So writing for an audience, and, you know, and picturing the people who I'm helping, that makes all the experience right there. I'm fortunate that everyone has, or we'll say most people have found what I've done to be helpful. And yeah, it was really special meeting you that first time. And I can remember meeting so many people who were just, they follow me around at Share, giving me this like quizzical look. And I'm like, can I help you? And they're like, where do I know you from?
Yes.
Like, not hi, not how are you? Where do I know you from? Like, I know we've spent a lot of time together. I know I've heard you. Where do I know you from? Like,
yeah.
Did I teach you COBOL? They're like, that's it.
Yeah. That's it. I'm so glad I'm not the only one. I'm not the weird one. I'm one of many. So now I want to ask you, you know, you're a role model to many people. Are there any role models or figures in your life who have inspired you? And if so, who are they and why?
So many in so many different areas. But the person who like I really looked to was like a beacon for what is right, and then like how my mind should be set is Tina Tarquinio. I've always looked up to them as an authentic figure in the community. So, like, she's got the experience to know a lot, but she's also very good at building teams. She understands that it is a team effort, and it can't just be based on a single perspective. So whenever I'm working on a project, I know that it has the potential to reach the bigger picture, I'll say. Whenever I start to get that like feeling of like complacency or like disconnected, like how does this connect to this? What should the voice be? Excuse me. I know that I can always think like, what would Tina do? Or I can just like walk down to her office and say, hey, set me straight on this. Like, how does this connect to this? You know, help me get excited about this. And she's a very real person, you know, with very real hobbies we talked about before. And I always appreciate her her perspective. If whether she's talking to me directly or just something she put out there that I'm consuming, she's got that perspective, and when the perspective is right, it's contagious. And so I'm really lucky that she's accessible and that she's someone in my life. I really look up to her.
That is amazing. That's awesome. Now, what advice, and this is going to be the last question.
All right.
What advice would you give to individuals interested in pursuing a career in mainframe technology or even mainframe adjacent?
Right.
So we have a whole ecosystem going on.
Yeah. So first off, get involved with the ecosystem. Get involved with the Open Mainframe Project, with ibm.com/community/z. Reach out to people on LinkedIn as much as you can.
Yeah.
But I want to underscore this thing, which I think is really important, is don't limit yourself to traditional mainframe concepts. I think too many people say, oh, I need to be a mainframe person. I'm going to learn JCL and Rex and COBOL and ParmLive. And that's great. That's a great construct. It's stuff that you should have in your toolbox. But right now and continuing in a very short time, you'll have just as good a chance as getting a mainframe job with a background in setting up DevOps pipelines and container solutions and working with software telemetry. Like have the foundations there, but understand that mainframe technology does not mean green screen. It doesn't mean static applications. It means all aspects of IT, like all the interesting stuff. So, have the foundations, but focus on the emerging technology as well. If you have a purely 1990s mainframe education and you haven't learned anything about hybrid cloud or containers or CI/CD or DevOps, that's not a good thing for finding a job and for making it rewarding. There's that Wayne Gretzky quote, skate where the puck is going, not where it's been. I think that applies to finding rewarding jobs and getting started in the mainframe community. Don't limit yourself. Find out what people are talking about. That's what you need to be an expert in. And it's never been easier to get hands-on with all types of technology. You can get hands-on to a mainframe in a couple of ways we mentioned earlier. 𝗬𝗎Explore with some of the courses, go onto the Open Mainframe Project, and any sort of technology you hear about, like that's how I keep up to date with technology, is I just go out. If it's not a container that I can download to my MacBook and play around with it right there, it's something that I can rent for like a couple cents or maybe like $1 on a public cloud platform. Like anything that you're interested in, you can get your hands on, or you can at least read the documentation. Like it's all there. Just got to do it.
Yep. And if you start talking to folks, if you open up your mouth,
you get fed.
That's it. It's so simple. It's one of those things. I really, man, oh man.
You got to start somewhere. You got to, at some point, the theoretical has to cross over into the practical, and it doesn't happen on its own. You need to pick that crossing over point. It's like, when you're playing any sort of sport, like, you know where you're going to go, you're watching the defender, you have to pick a point to get over there. Yep. That's when you need to cross over from the theoretical to the practical. And hopefully you find the right spot and the right time by using your links in the community. So, it's a three-way thing.
Right. And if you don't, you got to keep at it. You can't give up at it. And I like to look at mainframe technology as this. Everybody keeps talking about, oh, I'm going to develop games and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I love it. I love it for you.
Yeah.
I love it for you. But have you ever thought about running your game on Linux One? Have you ever thought about running through, there's whole databases that just like make people better, and deliver goods and all sorts of things. We've got to think outside the box and just know that the big box, which is the mainframe, this is where all of the stuff that you see on the outside comes to play.
Yeah, and going back to video games, there's so much of video games on the back end infrastructure side that is really just simulating like a real world's economy. You're buying stuff, you're trading stuff, transactions are. It seems like a natural fit. I know there's stuff in the pipeline. I'm looking forward to seeing that stuff come to fruition.
Oh man, I wish that I could just call you one day and say, "Tell me everything."
And I would say I can't tell you anything.
And you'd be like, "No."
That's frustrating part about being involved in technology is the thing you really want to tell somebody is the thing that's just around the corner.
Yeah. It's so exciting. That is the whole thing. Jeff, I just want to say thank you again. Like, I'm not going to blow thank you forever, but you and a bunch of other people, like it took a village, trust me, a very large village to create who I am today. And I'm so thankful for all of y'all. Is there anyone that you want to shout out before you leave? You talked about Tina and her awesomeness. Anybody else that shares that?
I mean, Martin Keene. I mean, he happens to be my manager, but he knows that I've idolized him before he was my manager. He's somebody who, on the content developer side, is just an absolute monster. In taking dry technical content, finding that thread of interestingness, and weaving it all throughout his stories. We work very well together, and I can send him a script for him to present, and vice versa. I don't know how he does what he does. He puts out so much content, and it's all him. Like it's 1,000% his voice and his delivery. Nobody does it better than Martin. And he's also he's streets ahead of me in the YouTube world, and he's just and in the patenting space too. We didn't get to that. I'm working, fingers crossed, working towards master inventor, which part of that means having a certain number of inventions. And I've worked on a couple with him. He's advised me on a couple, but he's got a workflow to him. It's just really commendable the way he works. Wow. I always look up to him.
Wow. We need 2 hours.
We really do.
We really do. We don't, but we do. We've got inventions going on, teaching going on, learning going on, music, just documentation, reading it effectively. I think that's the biggest part. Learned that from you as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on and for taking the time and for sharing this unapologetic you, just you. And I think that the viewers, the people in my viewership, they really enjoy knowing that it's okay to be a real human. They really like that. That's like their thing. Like, I don't sit here and teach you JCL. I'm not that person. I can. Don't get it wrong.
Right.
But that's my jam. But I'm the one I'm the good auntie. I'm the nice auntie. And I let folks know that we are just fun people, and we like stuff, and we do things that, don't you love that stuff? Just like,
I like stuff.
Yeah, I like stuff. We like stuff, and we like to be able to help change the world. And with that change comes betterness and kindness and empathy. And there's so much humanity on the mainframe because that's what we bring to the mainframe. So thank you for being a part of my mission and spreading that news. I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this, and I had a lot of fun. And man, that did not feel like an hour 10 at all.
I told you. So I'll just go ahead and close out here. And thanks everybody for coming through. This was a live broadcast every Sunday around noonish. We talk with our friends and we learn about other folks and how they actually do the job, right? We are mainframers. We are programmers. Even if you're mainframe adjacent, you are a part of this ecosystem, no matter what anybody says. I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Tish Talks Tech. My name is 𝗬𝗂𝗕𝗏, and our favorite special guest today is Jeff Bisti. And I hope that you do well. So bye, everybody. Thanks.